love and longing. So that's the answer? A big old bit of pride and insecurity is the reason why you're a 10-foot Amazon war queen in that tournament? Bob asks Miro Noir in shock as it shows her stomping out onto the battlefield barefoot in round 1. True to their claims, her feet were leaving cracks and craters, and she was enormous. Her muscles, then, were easily the size of her head now, and the tight yoga shorts are all she's wearing beyond her shell, which is a massive spiky affair painted black but with brass, or more likely, Kutha spikes large that glow with power. It's large enough for her to hide behind as practical armor. Its clasps and chest armor are what keeps her decent. Even her horns are more prominent, standing out like flexing arms to proclaim her glory. Flame spills from her lips as she roars like a beast towards her opponents who roar back, not so much knights in tournament than dragons at war. "I'm not even a queen now! This was to earn the title of princess," Miro Noir protests. "And what's an Amazon? Tribe of warrior women out of legend," Jonathan answers from the opposite side. Vernon and Miro Noir are the central silhouettes with Bob on the far left side and Jonathan on the right. "But that's everybody. Men being the warriors is the weird thing," she notes in a confused tone. "Hopefully you don't mind that I'd go to war for you?" Vernon asks, giving her a peck on the cheek. "Oh, Vernon," she gushes. "Hey, we're here for violence, not mush," Bob protests. "Bad form. Take the sop to the sides," Jonathan adds. "You can both go boil your heads." Vernon growls out to them as Miro Noir giggles in amusement as the rest of the massive opponents crash into the scene. There is a difference, though. Where they like the past, Miro Noir are fierce and powerful looking. Miro Noir is also the only one that isn't pawing at the hard stone beneath them as they rare to fight one another. "And here we go!" Miro Noir exclaims as the bugling of a horn signals all the girls to charge, but Miro Noir does not. Now, as you can see, they all made the mistake of being overeager. It's nice to want to get things done, but leaping before you look is a quick way to get hurt, or in this case, bunch up together for one big, nasty attack. She explains as her past self takes in a huge lungful of air and exhales a blast of blue fire that washes over the other 5 in an instant. The match is declared with Miro Noir the winner as the shells come apart and Bob gestures at the screen incredulously before gesturing to Miro Noir, then back at the screen. "Use your words, Bob. You're a big boy." Jonathan teases him from the other side. "The heck just happened? It's over just like that? What's the competition even about?" "Dude, the name. It's the Broken Shell or Shell Cracker Tournament. The win condition is to be the last one with their shell intact. My lovely wife here," Vernon explains before gushing, "burned off all the connections and straps on a bunch of poorly made shells, giving her an easy win." That's right. Those 5 demonstrated the folly of rushing in too eagerly. Of course, they're young, so it's not a bad thing. A lot of girls enter the tournament as a chance to learn and don't expect to win. They're usually pushed out in the first round, and that was me doing my part of the cleanup duty. It gets serious from this point. Miro Noir explains. "First 2 rounds are more introduction rounds than anything. Shoo out the silly little girls playing at Princess and see who really wants it. This was a somewhat smaller tournament than most, so the goofballs were pushed out fairly quickly. 5 rounds rather than 6. So they adjust the rounds depending on how many people sign up? Oh yes, the smallest ones have 4 rounds and they rarely go ever 6, though there was an 8-round tournament a long time ago," Miro Noir explains as Bob openly starts flicking his fingers around and is clearly doing some kind of heavy math in his head. "So, there were nearly 8,000 sign-ups in your competition? That's pretty big." "Well, anyone can sign up if they haven't won the title already, so turn-up is fairly good even on smaller years." Miro Noir answers him and Bob nods with a grin. "Still best out of 8,000 is pretty darn good. You got a catch and a half there, Vern." "She's best of the best, and don't you forget it," Vernon retorts as he picks up Miro Noir and sits her on his lap. She leans in and kisses him softly before the video skips ahead to the next round. "Hey, you two, it's starting," Bob remarks and is summarily ignored as the kiss is maintained into a makeout session if it kept itself PG. "Guys," Jonathan remarks in an offhand, amused tone. "Hey!" Bob shouts, throwing a half-filled but thankfully closed water bottle into the back of Vernon's head. "Hey!" Vernon shouts at him while Miro Noir's silhouette shows that she not only has fangs, but that sparks of fire and a small tongue of flame emerge when she growls at someone. "Holy crap!" Jonathan remarks as he tries to sidle off screen entirely. "Don't you back off, you wanted me to do that!" Bob shouts as he points at Jonathan. "Dude, we do not have telepathy and I will disavow any claim otherwise!" Jonathan protests as Miro Noir visibly huffs before cuddling into Vernon. "All right, both of you kids can settle right the hell down. We're all adults here, so act like it." Vernon scolds them both. "Now, my dear, is there anything special about this round in the tournament?" He asks, gesturing up towards the screen to bring his wife's attention to it. "Yes, see there?" she asks, pointing to an Apuk fighter with a caution yellow shell. "She's an overeager leftover from the last round. I don't get the chance to... but... yay!" She explains as the overeager one rushes to her nearest opponent and gets punched back with enormous force and barely a glance. She rockets backwards and her shell shatters on impact with the stone floor. No doubt saving her from further injury, but also taking her out of the tournament. "Eager in, eager out," Jonathan chuckles. "Don't talk about in and outs, I'm hungry." Bob returns. "Huh?" Miro Noir asks. "I think he just referenced an American restaurant chain," Vernon asks, as there's a massive rush towards each other. "Wait, I thought rushing was folly." "Rushing without sizing up your opponents is folly. This rush is after everyone has had time to consider their foes and think things through. I and all the others have there I go, a plan." Miro Noir explains as her past version rushes into the center before suddenly jumping backwards and then up. She crashes down on an opponent, and a fist covered in bright red fire crashes into her enemy's shell, shattering it in a single blow. She then jukes to the side to avoid the fallout. "Yeah, that caught me off guard. I expected to crack the shell, not shatter it. It was made of more brittle components than I considered." She explains before there's a massive gout of flame in the center of the arena to her past self's left. "Then I got an idea." The battling Miro Noir takes a stomp and claps her hands together as blue flames cover them. The blue flames stoke the fire in the center to an enormous conflagration that leaves only a single opponent standing and panting, only for Miro Noir to rush in and drive a knee into her stomach and cracking the connecting components of the shell in half. It falls to the ground with a slam followed by the wearer who looks like she ran a marathon. "What was that?" Bob demands. "That should be obvious, you clown," Vernon retorts, and Miro Noir giggles. "It's simple. You see, conjuring a twister of heat and flame is easy. Controlling it while you're inside it is very hard, especially if someone outside of it decides to feed it a lot of power and throw off the balance." Miro Noir explains as her past self helps up the one who she just overwhelmed to the roar of the crowd. A trick had won the day, but it was a good trick. "I figured it was something like that, but we're going to be showing this to everyone else you know. We've got an audience," Bob explains, pointing right at the camera with his thumb. "Right next round. Ding, ding, ding," Jonathan says, fast-forwarding to Miro Noir's next round in the tournament. This time, the past Miro Noir slinks into the tournament and pays a lot of attention to a tiny petite blonde woman with a miniature shell-shaped backpack and wearing a frilly royal blue ball gown capped by a golden crown with what looks like a clover pattern on it. She's roughly the same size as Miro Noir is now. "It happens on occasion," Miro Noir says, cuddling into Vernon. "We don't have the right number of girls for a proper six-girl free-for-all, so the round changes. You have a time limit you have to endure instead, and a proper princess is brought in." Miro Noir explains as her past self seems to go into mild panic as the petite woman smiles and gives her, in particular, a friendly-seeming wave. "Aside from the princess, you've only got 2 opponents," Bob notes as Vernon holds Miro Noir close. "There were some mutual shell breakings in the last round. No one won those." Miro Noir continues in a mildly haunted tone. "What happens if the princess wipes out everyone?" Bob asks. "Doesn't matter. The ones that end up facing the princess are the extras. Getting into those rounds is the worst luck possible. But surviving it? That's even worse. It's seen as a guarantee of a strong opponent, which means everyone teams up against you in later rounds." Miro Noir explains as the round begins, and the princess blurs and reappears with a single finger extended next to Mironoir's past self, who's skidding backwards with naked fear and pain written across her face. She had tried and failed to dodge. Her toes gouge trenches into the stone as she tries to stop skidding backwards into a wall, and then there is fire, burning green and roiling towards her like the boulder of doom from Indiana Jones. She exhales a torrent of blue flames to try and counter it, but it parts in front of the roiling green fury like smoke, and it draws closer and closer, causing her clothing and hair to start to smoke. "Aren't you APOC immune to flame?" Jonathan demands in shock. "Nothing's that immune," Mironoir counters as her past self dives to the side and craters the ground in her evasion from the fire. It turns to follow her, and her eyes go wide before narrowing with focus. A stone-shattering stomp, and she takes a wide stance. She breathes deeply and fully, focuses herself, and as smoke arises from her body, her eyes blaze with power. She lets out a solid beam of green flame that slams into the massive roiling boulder of fire. The boulder slows, loses cohesion, and shatters. Mironoir falls to her knees in exhaustion, then looks up at the sound of a delicate-heeled slipper tapping into the ground. The princess is there holding the shattered remains of her opponent's shells. She smiles kindly just as the bell goes off. "Well done," she says in an APOC language with a translation in galactic trade blazoned across the lower screen. Then like that, she turns around and skips away, leaving Mironoir panting, exhausted and nursing a massive growing bruise on her stomach from where the princess had flicked her. Ever get called in to be the scary princess in other tournaments?" Vernon asks in a teasing tone. "No. And I've made a request not to be brought in on the next one. They don't make you fight family unless you specifically request it. This seems like a good stopping point. I need to refill this with more soda and grab some more snacks. Who's with me?" Bob asks, and Jonathan laughs. "You need to stop thinking with your stomach. But this would be the spot to put in a word from our sponsors," Jonathan adds. "You idiots have sponsors?" Vernon demands in confusion, and there's a thumbs up from both Bob and Jonathan. "What is going on?" Mironoir asks. "Apparently we're taking a break and they're putting in some advertisement of some kind." "Excuse me?"